In the summer of 1944, deep in Nazi-occupied Yugoslavia, something impossible was about to happen. 492 American airmen, shot down, hunted, starving, were trapped behind enemy lines with no hope of rescue. Their salvation would come not from their own military, but from people who had every reason to let them die. Peasants facing starvation, resistance fighters already abandoned by the Allies. Villagers who knew that helping would mean execution. Together, they would pull off the largest rescue of American lives from enemy territory in the entire Second World War. And then, for 30 years, the mission would be erased from history. This is Operation Halyard, the rescue the world forgot. Until now. The year is 1944.
High above the Balkans, American bomber crews cross enemy skies on missions that will reshape the war.
Their targets, oil refineries in Ploiești, Romania, the fuel source of Hitler's war machine. But the journey is deadly. From bases in southern Italy, hundreds of B-17 flying fortresses and B-24 Liberators climb through thin air, flying without fighter escort deep into Nazi-controlled territory. German anti-aircraft batteries track them. Messerschmitt fighters hunt them. Many never return. The missions to Ploiești begin in earnest in April 1944. Operation Tidal Wave, launched the previous year, had proven costly. 54 aircraft lost in a single day. But the oil fields must be destroyed. Hitler's war machine runs on Romanian petroleum. Without it, his tanks stop rolling, his planes stop flying, so the bombers keep coming. Day after day, week after week. The 15th Air Force, based in Foggia, Italy, sends wave after wave of heavy bombers north across the Adriatic Sea, over the mountains of Yugoslavia and into the heart of Nazi-controlled Romania. The round trip is over 1,000 miles. The flight time, 6 to 8 hours. The altitude, 25,000 feet, where the air is thin and the cold bites through flight suits. The crews are young. Most are barely 20 years old. They have trained for months, but nothing prepares them for the reality of combat at altitude. The flak bursts like black flowers around them. The fighters come in fast, guns blazing. When a plane is hit, there are seconds to decide, bail out or try to make it home. Between April and October 1944, dozens of American aircraft are shot down over Yugoslavia. Some explode in midair, their crews lost instantly. Others spiral down trailing smoke, giving men time to jump. Men bail out into darkness, their parachutes drifting over mountains they cannot name, in a land torn apart by occupation and civil war. This is Yugoslavia under the Nazi boot. German divisions control the cities and main roads. The Wehrmacht has garrisoned troops in every strategic town. Croatian fascists, the Ustaše, patrol the countryside, hunting resistance fighters and executing civilians suspected of aiding the enemy. Execution orders are posted in every village square. The penalty for sheltering an Allied soldier, death by hanging or firing squad, not just for the individual, but often for entire families. But what happens next defies all wartime logic. When American airmen land in the Serbian countryside, they do not find enemies. They find farmers, shepherds, families who have lost everything to war. And these people, starving, terrorized, betrayed by their own allies, make a choice that will save hundreds of lives. They choose mercy. The wreckage of a B-24 smolders on a hillside near the village of Pranjani in central Serbia. The plane went down just after dawn, hit by German anti-aircraft fire over Belgrade. 3 crew members died in the crash. 7 bailed out. German search parties comb the forests, hunting for survivors. They move methodically, using dogs and local collaborators. But the villagers reach the crash site first. They find young men, boys really, injured, frightened, speaking a language they do not understand. One has a broken leg. Another has burns on his hands and face. They are disoriented, in shock, fumbling with maps they cannot read. The Serbs hide them. They carry the injured man on their backs, deep into the forest. They cover the parachutes with a brush. They scatter the debris to make tracking difficult. And they send word through the mountains, the Americans are alive. This pattern repeats throughout the spring and summer. A B-17 crashes near Chetnik. 5 survivors are hidden by a local priest. A B-24 ditches in a field outside Kraljevo. The crew is sheltered by a family who has already lost 2 sons to German reprisals. The villagers know the risks. They have seen the consequences of resistance. In nearby towns, entire populations have been massacred for far less. The German order is clear. 10 Serbs executed for every German soldier killed, 100 for every German officer. The same penalty applies to those who aid enemy combatants. But the Serbs remember something older than this war. They remember hospitality as a sacred duty. They remember the stranger at the gate, the wounded traveler, the ancient codes of protection and honor. And so they act. By midsummer 1944, more than 100 Allied airmen are scattered across the hills of Ravna Gora, protected by Serbian peasants and a dwindling force of anti-Nazi guerrillas called the Chetniks. No one in Washington knows they are there. No rescue is planned. No help is coming, or so it seems, because in the darkness of occupied Yugoslavia, a few brave men are about to attempt something unprecedented, a mass rescue behind enemy lines that will become the largest evacuation of American lives from Nazi territory in the entire Second World War. This is the story of Operation Halyard, a story buried in classified files for decades. A story of ordinary people performing extraordinary acts of courage. A story the world forgot until now. The village of Pranjani sits in a valley in the Šumadija region of central Serbia, far from the main roads, surrounded by dense forests and steep hills. Before the war, it was home to farmers and shepherds, a place where everyone knew everyone, where life moved to the rhythm of seasons and harvests. Now, in the summer of 1944, it has become a sanctuary. The villagers know the risks. German patrols sweep through weekly, searching for resistance fighters. Their boots echo on the dirt roads. Their trucks rumble past farmhouses. Their officers demand information, threaten reprisals, post warnings on church doors. Informants are everywhere. Some collaborate out of fear, others out of greed. The Germans pay well for intelligence. A single denunciation can doom an entire village. The punishment for aiding the enemy is swift and public. Hangings in the town square, firing squads at dawn, bodies left hanging as warnings. Entire families have been executed for hiding a single partisan fighter. But when American airmen stumble into their fields, disoriented, injured, desperate, the people of Pranjani do not hesitate. They bring them into their homes. They share their bread, though they themselves are starving. Serbia in 1944 is a land of famine. The Germans have requisitioned crops and livestock. What little remains must be hidden from both occupiers and desperate neighbors. Yet the villagers feed the Americans. They give them their own portions. They slaughter precious chickens. They bake bread from hidden flour. They hide the airmen in barns, in cellars, in the forest when German trucks rumble past. The women cook what little food remains. The men stand watch through the night, rifles in hand, ready to sound the alarm if patrols approach. These are not soldiers. These are farmers who have already lost sons, brothers, fathers to the war. Old men with weathered hands, women who have buried their husbands, young boys pressed into service as lookouts. They have no weapons, no training, no reason to believe they will survive, but they act anyway. One airman will later write in his diary, "They had nothing, and they gave us everything." I asked one old man through gestures why he was risking his life for us. He simply pointed to the sky, then to his heart. I understood. The airmen arrive in small groups, sometimes alone. A pilot dragged from a burning cockpit by farmers who saw him crash. A tail gunner with a shattered leg, carried 30 miles on a makeshift stretcher by Chetnik soldiers. A navigator who parachuted into a tree and hung there for hours before farmers cut him down, unconscious and bleeding. They speak no Serbian. The villagers speak no English. But there is a language older than words, the language of shared humanity. Gestures, smiles, a hand on the shoulder, a bowl of soup pressed into trembling hands. By late July, more than 150 American and Allied airmen are hidden in the hills around Pranjani and neighboring villages. They sleep in haystacks, hidden beneath layers of hay that make breathing difficult. They eat beans and cornbread, grateful for every morsel. They wash in cold streams, their bodies thin and bruised. They wait. The danger grows daily. German intelligence has intercepted reports of downed airmen in the region. Wehrmacht officers question villages. Search parties intensify. Collaborators offer rewards for information, a bag of flour, a few coins, a guarantee of safety. The Luftwaffe sends reconnaissance flights over the valley, photographing fields and forests. looking for signs of hidden camps or unusual activity, and yet the villagers do not waver. Among them is a school teacher named Miloš. Before the war, he taught mathematics and literature. Now he helps coordinate the hidden Americans, using his limited English learned from old textbooks.
He keeps a careful record of names, units, and injuries, writing in a small notebook he keeps hidden in a hollow tree. There is a farmer named Jovan, who lost his 2 sons in the first year of the occupation.
When he finds an injured American pilot in his field, he carries him on his back for 5 miles to safety. He tells others in Serbian, "My sons would have wanted me to do this." There is a widow named Milica, who lost her husband to a German firing squad. She hides 3 American boys in her attic, bringing them food twice a day, ignoring the terrified protests of her neighbors. When asked why, she says simply, "Because they are someone's sons. Their names will never appear in history books. No medals will be struck in their honor. No monuments will bear their names, not for decades. But their choices will echo across generations. The airmen understand what is being risked for them. They see the fear in the eyes of their protectors. They hear the rumors of nearby massacres, entire villages burned, populations executed. They know that if the Germans discover them, everyone dies. Some of the airmen try to escape on their own, heading west toward the coast, hoping to reach Allied lines. Most are captured within days or killed by German patrols. Their bodies are displayed in town squares as warnings. The ones who stay, who trust the Serbs, survive. But survival is not rescue. And as summer wears on, as the heat presses down and the food supplies dwindle further, the question hangs in the air like smoke. Is anyone coming for us? The answer is traveling through the mountains in the hands of a Chetnik courier, a young man named Nikola, who operates a hidden radio.
He has been sending coded messages for weeks, hoping someone is listening. Finally, in late July, a message comes back from Allied headquarters in Bari, Italy. Received.
Stand by. Help is closer than they know, but the greatest challenges still lie ahead. General Draža Mihailović is not a man the Allies trust anymore. He was once their hero. In 1941, when Nazi Germany crushed Yugoslavia, in 11 days, the invasion lasted from April 6th to April 17th. Mihailović was a colonel in the Royal Yugoslav Army. When the Manita's government surrendered and the king fled to London, Mihailović refused to accept defeat. He took to the mountains with a handful of loyal officers and organized the first armed resistance in occupied Europe. His fighters, called Chetniks, named after traditional Serbian guerrilla forces that had fought the Ottomans centuries before, sabotaged railways, ambushed German convoys, and tied down enemy divisions that were needed elsewhere. Churchill praised him as a symbol of defiance. Roosevelt sent him aid through covert channels. The BBC broadcast his name across Europe. King Peter II, in exile in London, promoted him to general and made him Minister of War for the Yugoslav government in exile. For a brief moment, Draža Mihailović was one of the most celebrated resistance leaders in the world. But by 1944, the wind had shifted. Mihailović's rival, Josip Broz Tito, leads the communist partisans, a more ruthless, more organized force backed by Soviet support and British political calculations. Tito fights Germans, but he also fights Mihailović. Yugoslavia is drowning in a 3-way civil war. Nazis against partisans against Chetniks. Villages are burned by all sides. Prisoners are shot without trial. Allegiances shift like sand. The war within a war is brutal and complex. Mihailović, loyal to the monarchy and wary of communist revolution, sometimes makes tactical accommodations with Italian occupiers to avoid German reprisals against Serbian civilians. Tito, focused solely on seizing power, accepts no compromise. The British, advised by officials who favor Tito's aggressive tactics and post-war communist alignment, decide Tito is more useful. Churchill personally withdrew support from Mihailović in late 1943. American aid follows reluctantly. By the summer of 1944, Mihailović is isolated, abandoned, running out of supplies and men. Allied liaison officers are withdrawn from his headquarters. Supply drops cease. Radio communication becomes sporadic. Officially, the Allies have written him off, and yet, when American airmen fall from the sky into his territory, He does not hesitate. Mihailović issues orders to every Chetnik unit. Transmitted by courier and radio. Protect the Americans at all costs. They are our guests. Treat them as brothers. Any man who harms them or betrays them to the Germans will answer to me personally. His men obey. Chetnik patrols guide lost airmen through German lines, moving only at night, avoiding roads and villages where collaborators might report them. They share their rations, already meager, often just cornbread and beans. They provide armed escorts to Pranjani, where the concentration of rescued flyers grows larger each week. Mihailović knows this will not save him. The Allies have made their choice. Tito will rule Yugoslavia after the war, backed by Soviet power and British pragmatism. Mihailović and his followers will be hunted down, labeled as traitors, erased from history. He knows this. His officers know this, and yet they persist. But he also knows something deeper. Honor is not negotiable. These American boys did not come to Yugoslavia to fight in a civil war. They came to bomb Plošť, to destroy Hitler's oil, to shorten the war and save lives. They were shot down doing their duty. They are not combatants in Yugoslavia's civil war. They are victims of circumstance. And if there is one last thing Mihailović can do, one final act that defines who his people are, regardless of what history will say about them, it is this: bring them home. In late July, Mihailović meets with his senior officers in a forest camp near the village of Pranjani. The meeting is held in a clearing with sentries posted on every ridge. German patrols have been active in the area, and secrecy is paramount. Among those present is a young Chetnik captain named Zvonimir, who speaks some English learned from a British liaison officer before the withdrawal. Zvonimir has been coordinating with the Airmen, learning their names, documenting their units, assessing their condition. He reports, "We have 143 Americans, 11 British, 6 Canadians, 2 French. Most are in acceptable condition. Some have injuries, broken bones, burns, shrapnel wounds. They are hidden in 7 villages within a 10-mile radius. The Germans suspect something but have not yet located them." Mihailović listens, then speaks. "We will build an airstrip. We will bring planes in, and we will send these men back to their families." His officers stare at him. An airstrip here? In the middle of Nazi-occupied Serbia, surrounded by German garrisons in Kragujevac, Čačak, and Kraljevo, under constant aerial surveillance. One officer, an older man named Dimitrie, speaks carefully. "General, with respect, the Germans have reconnaissance flights daily. They watch the roads, the villages, the fields. If we clear land for an airstrip, they will see it. And then they will come with infantry and armor. We cannot defend against that." Mihailović nods. "That is why we will not build a permanent airstrip. We will use existing fields. We will clear them only at the last moment. We will operate only at night. And we will have scouts on every approach, ready to alert us the moment German forces move." Another officer asks, "And if the planes do not come? If the Allies refuse?" Mihailović meets his gaze. "If we do nothing, these men die here. Or the Germans find them and we all die. This is the only way." He pauses, then adds quietly, "And when this war is over, and they write the history books, they will not write about us with kindness. They will forget we existed, or they will call us traitors and collaborators. But those boys will remember, and they will tell the truth. He is right about that." The orders go out. Villagers begin surveying fields. Chetnik sentries establish an expanded perimeter. Scouts are positioned on every hill with sightlines to German-controlled roads. And Nicola, the radio operator hidden in a farmhouse attic, sends a coded message to Allied headquarters in Bari, Italy, using a frequency monitored by the OSS. The message is transmitted in short bursts to avoid German radio direction finding. It is received, decoded, and delivered to the desk of Captain George Vujnović. The message is simple: "We have your men. 160 and growing can secure the landing zone. Send planes. We'll guarantee safety." Awaiting instructions. In Bari, the message is received with disbelief. Over 160 Allied airmen, alive and organized behind enemy lines, protected by a resistance force the Allies have officially abandoned. It seems impossible. It could be a German deception, a trap to ambush rescue aircraft. But one man believes it. His name is Captain George Mussolini, Serbian-American, OSS operative. and he is about to volunteer for the most dangerous mission of his life. The Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, is America's wartime intelligence agency, the forerunner of the CIA. Founded in 1942 under the direction of William Wild Bill Donovan, it operates in the shadows of conventional warfare. Its operatives parachute into enemy territory, organize resistance movements, gather intelligence, sabotage infrastructure, and execute missions no regular army unit can attempt. They are spies, saboteurs, and soldiers rolled into one. In the summer of 1944, the OSS maintained a forward base in Bari, Italy, a port city on the Adriatic coast. From here, they coordinate operations across the Balkans, sending agents into Yugoslavia, Greece, Albania, and beyond. It is here, in a sweltering office overlooking the Adriatic Sea, that the radio message from Serbia arrives on the desk of Captain Draža Mihailović. Vujnović is an OSS officer of Serbian descent, born in Pennsylvania to immigrant parents. He speaks fluent Serbian and has been assigned to Balkan operations precisely because of his language skills and cultural knowledge. He has processed dozens of intelligence reports from Yugoslavia, most of them fragmentary and unreliable. But this message is different. It is specific. It names locations. It provides numbers. And it comes from a radio operator whose call sign Vujnović recognizes, one of Mihailovic's trusted men. Vujnović reads the message twice, then brings it to his superior, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Thayer. Thayer is skeptical. Mihailović? Thayer says. We pulled support from him 8 months ago. The British say he's finished. Why would he suddenly be protecting over 100 Americans? Vujnović responds carefully. Because, sir, that's who he is. The Serbs take hospitality seriously. If Americans are in his territory, he will protect them. Thayer frowns. Or the Germans have captured his radio and are using it to bait us into a trap. If we send planes and they're shot down or ambushed, it's a propaganda disaster. Then we verify it, Vujnović says. We send someone in to assess the situation. Thayer considers this. Sending an operative behind enemy lines is dangerous under any circumstances. Sending one to link up with a resistance force the Allies have abandoned, in territory crawling with German divisions, borders on suicidal. But if the message is genuine, if there really are that many Allied airmen trapped there, the moral imperative is clear. Thayer picks up the phone and calls the Air Force Liaison Office. Within hours, a meeting is convened. Air Force intelligence confirms that numerous aircraft have been lost over Yugoslavia in recent months. Many are listed as missing in action, their crews presumed dead or captured. But what if they are not? The meeting concludes with a cautious decision. Send an OSS team to verify. If the report is accurate, plan an evacuation, but move carefully. No publicity, no promises. Thayer returns to Vujnović. We need someone who speaks Serbian, understands the region, and has the nerve to parachute behind enemy lines with no guarantee of extraction. Do you have anyone? Vujnović does not hesitate. George Mussolini. Lieutenant George Mussolini is 30 years old, born in Pittsburgh to Serbian immigrant parents. His father worked in the steel mills. His mother taught him Serbian from childhood, along with folk songs, proverbs, and stories of the old country. Mussolini grew up straddling two worlds, American by birth, Serbian by heritage. When the war broke out, he enlisted and was recruited by the OSS because of his language skills. He has already completed one covert mission into Yugoslavia earlier in the war, parachuting in to assess Mihailovic's forces and deliver supplies. He knows the terrain, he knows the culture, and he knows Mihailović personally. When Vujnović briefs him on the situation, Mussolini listens quietly, studying the maps, reading the intercepted messages. Finally, he looks up. I'll go, Vujnović nods. You'll need a team. Radio operators, someone who can handle communications if anything happens to you. Mussolini thinks for a moment. Michael Rajacic, Arthur Jabilian, both Serbian Americans. Both are good under pressure. The mission is designated Operation Halyard, the name chosen at random from a list of available operation codenames. The objective: infiltrate German-occupied Serbia, locate the airmen, assess the feasibility of an airlift, and coordinate the rescue. No backup. No extraction plan. If Mussolini is captured, the OSS will disavow him. If the mission fails, the airmen will likely be discovered and executed. Mussolini spends 3 days preparing. He studies aerial reconnaissance photos of the Pranjani region. He reviews German troop dispositions.
He memorizes radio frequencies and code phrases. On the night of August 2nd, 1944, Mussolini boards a C-47 transport plane at Bari airfield.
With him are Master Sergeant Michael Rajacic and Specialist Arthur Jabilian, both radio operators and volunteers. The 3 men are dressed in olive drab fatigues with no insignia. They carry pistols, knives, emergency rations, and radio equipment packed in padded containers designed to survive a parachute drop. The plane climbs into darkness and turns east, toward the mountains of Serbia. The pilots fly low to avoid German radar, following valleys and ridgelines, navigating by dead reckoning and starlight. Inside the cargo bay, Mussolini sits in silence, checking his gear, rehearsing the plan. Rajacic and Jabilian do the same. There is little conversation. Each man knows the risks. Hours pass. The plane crosses the Adriatic, then the mountains of Montenegro, then into Serbian airspace. The pilot receives a coded signal from the ground, a brief radio pulse indicating the drop zone is secure. The jump light turns red, then amber. Mussolini stands, hooks his static line, checks his parachute one last time. Rajacic and Jabilian do the same. The jump light turns green. Mussolini grips the edges of the open door, feels the rush of wind and engine noise, and jumps into the night. He freefalls for 3 seconds. Then the static line deploys his parachute. The jolt is sharp, familiar. Above him, the silk canopy billows and catches. He looks up, checks the lines, then looks down. Below, in the darkness, he can see faint lights, signal fires marking the drop zone. He lands in a forest clearing, alone, deep behind German lines. The parachute billows and collapses. He quickly gathers it, stuffs it into a pack, and moves to cover. Silence. Then, from the shadows, figures emerge. They are Chetnik sentries, armed with old rifles and bandoliers, watching him cautiously. Mussolini speaks to them in Serbian, using the pre-arranged code phrase, "The eagle has landed." One of the sentries steps forward, peers at him, then smiles and responds, "The nest is ready." Within minutes, Mussolini is escorted through the forest to a hidden camp. Rajacic and Jabilian land safely and are brought in separately. And there, standing in the dim light of a field tent, is General Draža Mihailović. The 2 men shake hands. Mihailović speaks quietly in Serbian. "Your boys are safe. But we must move quickly. The Germans are suspicious." Mussolini asks how many. "More than 150, Mihailović replies. "And more arrive every week. Some are injured, all are exhausted. But they are alive." Mussolini does the math. "It will take multiple planes, multiple nights, perfect coordination, and absolute secrecy." He looks at Mihailović and nods. "Show me where we can land." The next morning, Mussolini is taken to Pranjani. What he sees there, exhausted American airmen, starving villagers, children standing guard with sticks, will stay with him for the rest of his life. The rescue is no longer theoretical. It is real, it is happening, and it is about to begin. Pranjani is not an airfield. It is a collection of farmsteads scattered across rolling hills, with narrow dirt roads and fields divided by ancient stone walls. There are no runways, no lights, no ground control systems, no infrastructure of any kind. But George Mussolini needs to land C-47 transport planes here, large, twin-engine aircraft that require at least 1,500 feet of flat, unobstructed ground to land safely, and even more to take off with a full load of passengers. Walks the valley with Mihailović, officers and a few of the rescued airmen who have aviation experience, pilots and navigators who understand what is needed. They survey the terrain, pacing off distances, checking for obstacles. The ground is uneven, studded with rocks, divided by low stone walls built centuries ago to separate fields. Trees line the edges. The hills rise steeply on all sides, creating a narrow approach corridor. Finally, they identify a promising site, a series of adjacent fields that, if cleared and leveled, might just be long enough. Mussolini paces it out himself. 1,600 feet. Barely enough. The C-47 pilots will have to come in steep, touch down at the very beginning of the strip, and use maximum braking. There is no margin for error. The work begins immediately. Villagers arrive with shovels, hoes, and ox-drawn plows. Chetnik soldiers join them. The airmen, many still recovering from injuries, grab tools and begin tearing down stone walls, filling ditches, pulling stumps, hauling away rocks. It is August. The sun is merciless. Temperatures reach 90 degrees. The work is backbreaking, and there is little water to drink. Men collapse from heat exhaustion and are carried to the shade, given what water can be spared, then sent back to work when they recover. And every hour, the risk of discovery grows. German reconnaissance planes fly over regularly, following predictable routes, photographing the landscape. If they spot unusual activity, a cleared field, a gathering of people, disturbed earth, they will investigate. German ground patrols pass through the area weekly, searching for partisan camps. Mussolini orders that work be done in short bursts, with sentries posted on every hilltop. When German aircraft approach, identifiable by the sound of their engines long before they are visible, everyone scatters into the woods. The villagers understand the stakes. If the Germans discover what they are building, the entire valley will be destroyed. Not just the men involved, but the women and children, the elderly, the livestock, everything. But they do not stop. An old woman named Maria, bent with age, works alongside young men, carrying rocks in a woven basket. When someone suggests she rest, she refuses. "My sons are dead," she says in Serbian, "but these boys will go home to their mothers." That is enough. A farmer named Stevan, who lost his farm to German confiscation, works from dawn until dusk, using his oxen to drag fallen trees and plow the rocky soil. When asked why he risks everything, he shrugs. What is left to lose? My land is gone. My family is scattered. At least this has meaning. Over 5 days, working mostly at night, they transform the fields of Pranjani into a makeshift landing strip. The ground is leveled with hand tools and oxen. Every rock larger than a fist is removed. Every ditch is filled. Every stone wall in the landing path is dismantled, stone by stone. Brush is cut. The airmen, using their aviation knowledge, mark out the dimensions with wooden stakes. They measure and remeasure. The length, 1,600 feet. The width, 150 feet. Not generous, but sufficient. At night, they test the surface by walking it in darkness, feeling for irregularities, filling in depressions. The airmen explain the need for a smooth surface. A single large rock or deep rut could collapse landing gear, dooming the plane and everyone aboard. On the 5th day, Mussolini stands at one end of the strip and looks down its length. It is not perfect. It is not safe by any normal standard, but it is the best they can do. He radios Bari using the encrypted equipment carried in by Rajacic and Jubilian. Runway complete. Ready for first extraction. Recommend night operations only. Expect minimal ground lighting. Pilots should be experienced in uncontrolled field landings. The reply comes back within hours. 3 C-47s inbound. Night of August 9. Flight crew briefed. Confirm reception procedures. Mussolini gathers the Chetnik officers and the villagers. Through Mihailović, who acts as translator, he explains the plan. On the night of August 9th, at precisely 2200 hours, they will light signal fires along the edges of the makeshift runway. Hay soaked in kerosene, arranged in an L-shaped pattern visible from the air. The fires will burn for only a few minutes, just long enough to guide the planes in. The first plane will land, load 30 men, and take off. Then the second, then the third. Total time on the ground. No more than 10 minutes per plane. If German forces detect the aircraft, and the sound of low-flying transports will carry for miles, they will respond with troops and possibly anti-aircraft fire. There will be no second chance. If the first plane crashes or is shot down, the operation ends. One of the villagers, an old man named Petar, who has lost 3 sons to the war, steps forward and speaks. Mussolini does not understand the words, but Mihailović translates. "We have waited for this moment. We have prayed for this moment. Let the planes come. We will hold the lights. We will guide them home." That night, Mussolini wrote in his field report, by the light of a kerosene lamp in a barn, "These people have done more for us than we have any right to ask. They have given everything, their food, their safety, their lives. If we succeed tomorrow night, it will be because of their courage, not ours. History should remember them. I fear it will not. The next day passes slowly. The airmen are told to prepare. They are given lists: 30 men for the first plane, 30 for the second, 30 for the third. The remaining men will wait for subsequent flights. Some of the airmen write letters, not knowing if they will survive the night. Others pray. A few sleeps, exhausted from weeks of hiding and stress. As the sun sets over Pranjani, the villagers and airmen take their positions. The signal fires are prepared. Bundles of hay soaked in kerosene ready to ignite. The runway is swept one final time, checked for debris, and in the distance to the west, 3 C-47 transport planes lift off from Bari airfield and turn east. Flying low over the Adriatic, heading into enemy skies, Operation Halyard is about to begin. August 9, 1944. The sun sets behind the mountains, and darkness covers the valley of Pranjani. The villagers and airmen wait in silence. No fires, no lights. German patrols passed through the area just hours earlier, their trucks kicking up dust on the dirt roads, their officers questioning villagers about suspicious activity. Every sound is amplified. Every shadow is a threat, a dog barking in the distance, the rustle of wind through trees, the nervous breathing of men who know that in the next few hours, their fates will be decided. George Mussolini checks his watch. 21:30 hours. The C-47s should be approaching Serbian airspace. He listens for the sound of engines, but hears only silence. The airmen selected for the first flight sit in groups of 10, scattered along the edge of the makeshift runway. They are silent, each man lost in his own thoughts. Some have been in Yugoslavia for months, others for just weeks. But all of them have wondered if this moment would ever come. At 21:50, a radio crackles. Arthur Jubilian, hunched over the radio equipment in a nearby barn, receives the transmission. He steps outside and signals to Mussolini. The lead pilot confirms 3 aircraft inbound. 10 minutes out, Mussolini gives the order. Along the edges of the makeshift runway, men scramble to their positions. They carry torches made of cloth wrapped around sticks soaked in kerosene. At Mussolini's signal, they light them. The fires ignite quickly, casting flickering orange light across the field. The flames dance in the night breeze. The fires are arranged in an L shape, the standard military signal for a landing zone, with the base of the L indicating the direction of approach. From somewhere in the darkness above comes the low rumble of engines. Distant, growing closer, the airmen strain to see. Then there, silhouettes against the stars. 3 C-47s flying in formation, descending fast. The lead plane drops lower. Too low. The pilot cannot see the ground clearly in the dim light. He banks hard, pulls up, circles back. The villagers and airmen hold their breath. If the pilot aborts, the mission fails. On the second approach, the plane descends again. Lower, lower. The engine noise fills the valley. Then, contact me. The plane's wheels touch dirt. The tail drops. The aircraft bounces once, hard, then twice, then settles and rolls forward, throwing up dust. Braking hard, it rolls to a stop just 50 feet from the tree line at the far end of the runway. A cheer erupts from the watching airmen, quickly stifled. There is no time to celebrate. The cargo door swings open before the plane has fully stopped. American crew chiefs jump out, waving the rescued airmen forward. Move, move, move! 30 men sprint toward the plane, some limping, some helped by comrades. They climb aboard, pack into the narrow fuselage, sit on the floor, shoulder to shoulder, holding on to whatever they can find. The entire boarding process takes less than 4 minutes. The engines roar. The plane turns, lines up with the runway and accelerates. It bounces over the rough ground, gaining speed, the tail lifting. And then, just as it seems it might run out of runway, the wheels leave the earth. The C-47 climbs steeply, banking left to clear the hills, and disappears into the night. Gone. The second C-47 is already on approach. It lands moments later, harder than the first, skidding slightly before straightening. Another 30 men boarded. 4 minutes, engines roar, takeoff. The plane lifts, clears the trees, vanishes. The third plane follows the same pattern. Land, load, takeoff. In less than 30 minutes, 90 American airmen have been evacuated from Nazi-occupied Yugoslavia. Not a shot fired. Not a man lost. On the ground, the remaining airmen embrace the villagers. They shake hands with Chetnik soldiers, some with tears streaming down their faces. An old Serbian woman presses a small embroidered handkerchief into the hand of a young airman and says something in Serbian he does not understand. He clutches it, nods and whispers, "Thank you." "Thank you." Mussolini orders the fires extinguished immediately. Within minutes, the valley is dark again, as if nothing happened. The villagers scatter back to their homes. The Chetnik guards take up their positions. The remaining airmen return to their hiding places. But something has happened. Something unprecedented. Over the next hour, Mussolini and his radio operators send a coded message to Bari. First extraction successful. 90 evacuated. No casualties. Runway intact. Request additional flights. In Bari, the message is received at OSS headquarters at 0200 hours. Senior officers are awakened. They demand confirmation. The mission seemed impossible. Landing cargo planes in enemy territory at night, with no ground control, no proper runway, no backup. Yet it succeeded. Lieutenant Colonel Thayer reads the report 3 times, then picks up the phone. Within an hour, orders came back to Pranjani. Continue operations. Evacuate all remaining personnel. Supply drop authorized if needed. Over the following nights, more C-47s land in Pranjani. August 10th. 2 planes. 60 more airmen evacuated, August 12th. 3 planes. 90 airmen, August 15th. 4 planes. 120 airmen. Each time the pattern is the same. Signal fires lit in darkness. Planes descending by faith and instinct. Men boarding in minutes. Planes lifting off into the night. Each time, the villagers light the fires. Each time, the Chetnik sentries guard the perimeter. Each time, German forces remain unaware. But the risks multiply with each mission. German intelligence officers in Belgrade are piecing together reports. Increased radio activity near Pranjani. Unexplained aircraft sounds at night. Local resistance to interrogation. Luftwaffe reconnaissance flights intensify. German ground patrols increase in frequency. The noose is tightening. By the end of August, nearly 250 Allied airmen had been rescued from Pranjani. But the operation is not over. More downed flyers continue to arrive, guided through German lines by Chetnik scouts. The autumn rains will soon make the field unusable, and German suspicion is reaching a critical point. Mussolini knows they are running out of time. Operation Halyard runs from August through December 1944. 5 months of continuous covert evacuations under the constant threat of German discovery. The operation is not a single dramatic event, but a grinding, nerve-wracking campaign of coordination, deception, and raw courage sustained over months. George Mussolini remained in Pranjani for the first 2 months, coordinating with the Chetnik forces, managing the airmen, and radioing flight plans to Bari. He lives in barns, sleeps on hay, eats whatever the villagers can spare. He loses weight, his uniform becomes ragged, but he keeps working. In September, he is joined by Lieutenant Nick Lalic, a fellow OSS officer and Serbian-American from Pennsylvania, who will eventually take over command when Mussolini is ordered back to Italy in November. The 2 men work closely with General Mihailović, who continues to provide armed protection, intelligence on German movements, and logistical support despite receiving no official Allied support. His forces are dwindling, men desert, supplies run out, promised Allied aid never arrives. But Mihailović never wavers in his commitment to the American airmen. Chetnik scouts monitor German movements constantly. They position lookouts on every major road leading to Pranjani. They intercept German radio communications when possible. They maintain a network of informants in German-occupied towns, gathering intelligence on troop movements and patrol schedules. Chetnik couriers carry messages across enemy lines, risking capture and execution with every journey. One courier, a teenager named Milan, makes 17 trips between Pranjani and other villages, guiding lost airmen through German checkpoints at night. He is eventually captured and executed in October 1944. He is 16 years old. Chetnik soldiers stand guard every night the planes arrive, positioned in concentric rings around the landing zone, ready to delay any German response long enough for the aircraft to escape. The rescued airmen are a diverse group. Most are Americans, bomber crew members shot down on missions to Plošť and other strategic targets in the Balkans. But there are also British, Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, South Africans, and a few others. They represent dozens of bomb groups: the 449th, The 450th, the 451st, the 454th, the 455th, the 456th, the 459th, the 460th, the 461st, the 484th, the 485th. Each group has its own stories of missions gone wrong, of flak and fighters, of desperate bailouts and miraculous survivals. Some airmen have been hiding in the mountains for months. Others arrive just days before their evacuation. They wait in makeshift camps scattered around Pranjani, sleeping in barns, haystacks, and open fields. The villagers feed them what little they can spare. Cornbread, beans, occasionally a chicken or rabbit. Some airmen lose 30-40 pounds during their time in Serbia. They suffer from malnutrition, dysentery, and untreated injuries. But they are alive. Among the rescued is Captain George Krayer, a B-24 pilot whose plane exploded over Belgrade after a direct flak hit. He parachuted into a forest, broke his ankle on landing, and was found by Serbian peasants who carried him to safety. He spent 6 weeks moving from village to village, always one step ahead of German patrols. Before reaching Pranjani, he will later write in his memoir, "I owe my life to people whose names I never learned, whose language I could not speak, but whose humanity I will never forget." Another is Lieutenant Bill Warfield, a navigator whose bomber was hit by flak and crashed near the town of Chetnik. He was the only survivor. Chetnik soldiers found him unconscious in the wreckage, carried him 30 miles through enemy territory on a makeshift stretcher, and delivered him to Pranjani. When he finally boards a C-47 in late August, he turns back and salutes the men who saved him. Several of them are crying. There is Staff Sergeant Claire Musgrove, a radio operator who was shot down in July. He spent 8 weeks hiding in a cave with 2 other crew members, surviving on berries and stream water, before Chetnik scouts located them and brought them in. There is Lieutenant Robert Lane, a pilot who parachuted into a German patrol and was captured. He escaped during a nighttime transfer, killed a guard with a rock, and fled into the mountains.
He wandered for 5 days before stumbling into a Serbian village.
The villagers hid him and sent word to the Chetniks. Each man has a story. Each story is a miracle. The flights themselves are masterpieces of precision and nerves. C-47 pilots. Many of them volunteers who are not told the full extent of the danger until after they agree, fly through darkness without navigation aids. Guided only by radio signals and burning hay, they land on a dirt strip barely long enough. In a valley surrounded by mountains, with German garrisons just miles away. One miscalculation, one gust of wind, one mechanical failure, and everyone dies. One pilot, Captain Richard Totten of the 60th Troop Carrier Group, makes more than a dozen flights into Pranjani between August and November.
He will later say in an interview, "We knew if we crashed, we'd be on our own."
There was no backup, no rescue plan. But those men had been waiting for us. We weren't going to let them down. Another pilot, Captain Roy Counds, nearly crashes on his first landing when his plane hits a hidden depression in the runway. The landing gear buckles but holds. He takes off with a full load anyway, nursing the damaged aircraft back to Italy. The plane is written off as unrepairable, but everyone aboard survives. By October, German intelligence began to suspect something was happening in the Pranjani region. Reports of increased radio activity reached German command in Belgrade. Luftwaffe reconnaissance flights intensify. German officers interrogate villagers more aggressively, offering rewards for information and threatening reprisals for silence. But they cannot locate the airstrip, because during the day, it does not exist. The field looks like any other farm field. The landing markers are removed. The fires are cold. The airmen are hidden. The villagers go about their work as if nothing is happening. Mihailović's intelligence network also spreads disinformation, feeding false reports to known collaborators, suggesting the airmen are being moved west toward the coast. German patrols chase ghosts while the planes keep landing. In November, as winter approaches, the weather deteriorates. Fog blankets the valley. Rain turns the runway to mud. Flights are delayed.
Some missions are aborted mid-flight when pilots cannot see the signal fires through the clouds. But the evacuations continue. On November 15th,
George Mussolini was ordered back to Bari. He has been behind enemy lines for nearly 4 months. His mission is complete. He boards one of the C-47s and is flown back to Italy, leaving Nick Lalich in command. Before he leaves, Mussolini embraces Mihailović. The general says quietly in Serbian, "Tell them we did our duty." "That is all I ask." Mussolini promises he will. Lalić remains in Pranjani through December, overseeing the final evacuations. The winter cold sets in. Snow begins to fall. The missions become more dangerous, more difficult. On December 27, 1944, the last C-47 landed in Pranjani under a clear winter sky. The remaining airmen board, the final group, men who have been waiting the longest. Nick Lalić climbs aboard last, carrying his radio equipment and field notes. The plane takes off and disappears into the winter clouds. Operation Halyard is complete. 492 Allied airmen were rescued. Dozens of OSS missions flew. Hundreds of Serbian villages and Chetnik soldiers were involved. Countless acts of courage, sacrifice, and humanity. 0 casualties during the evacuation operations. It is a military miracle, a humanitarian triumph, one of the most successful rescue operations in the history of warfare. But within months, it will be classified, buried, and deliberately forgotten. The war in Europe ends on May 8, 1945. Germany surrenders unconditionally. The Allies celebrate in the streets of London, Paris, New York, and Moscow. The rescued airmen return home to parades, reunions, and the embrace of families who thought they were dead. They are forever changed by what they experienced in the mountains of Serbia. They carry memories of kindness shown by strangers, of villagers who shared their last piece of bread, of men who risked everything for people they did not know. But for the people who saved them, there is no celebration. There is only darkness. Yugoslavia, liberated from Nazi occupation, falls immediately under communist control. Josip Broz Tito, backed by Soviet forces and British political support, consolidates power with ruthless efficiency. His partisans hunt down former rivals with systematic brutality. The Chetniks, labeled as collaborators and traitors by Tito's propaganda machine, are targeted for elimination. Thousands are arrested. Thousands more are executed without trial. Villages suspected of supporting Mihailović are burned. Families are torn apart. General Draža Mihailović goes into hiding in the mountains of eastern Bosnia, moving from village to village under cover of darkness, protected by loyalists who refuse to abandon him. He knows the end is coming. His forces are scattered. His allies have abandoned him, but he will not surrender. In March 1946, after nearly a year on the run, Mihailović was betrayed. The informant is never publicly identified, but historians believe it was someone within his inner circle, bought by Tito's secret police with promises of leniency. Tito's forces capture Mihailović near the town of Visegrad. He is taken to Belgrade in chains, paraded before cameras, displayed as a trophy of Tito's victory. He was put on trial in June 1946. The trial is held in the House of Trade Unions in Belgrade, conducted before a military tribunal. The charges: collaboration with the enemy occupiers, war crimes against the Yugoslav people, treason against the state. The trial is a show. The verdict is predetermined. Witnesses are coerced. Evidence is fabricated. The proceedings are broadcast on radio and covered extensively in communist newspapers. Mihailović's defense is simple and direct. He fought the Nazis from the first day to the last. He protected Allied soldiers at great risk to himself and his people. He saved American lives when no one else could or would. He requests that American officers be allowed to testify on his behalf. He asks that the OSS confirm his role in Operation Halyard. He provides names, dates, and details. The request is denied. The United States and Britain, now in the early stages of the Cold War and seeking accommodation with Tito's Yugoslavia, remain silent. The records of Operation Halyard are classified at the highest levels. The rescued airmen are instructed by military intelligence not to speak publicly about their experiences. The mission is systematically erased from official history. On July 17, 1946, Draža Mihailović was executed by firing squad in Belgrade. He is 53 years old. His last words, recorded by a witness and smuggled out of Yugoslavia years later: "I found myself in a whirl of events and intrigues. I found destiny was merciless toward me when it threw me into the most difficult whirlwinds. I wanted much, I began much, but the world whirlwind carried away me and my work. His body is buried in an unmarked grave. The location is kept secret by the communist authorities to prevent his supporters from creating a shrine. The villagers of Pranjani are not executed. Tito's regime is more subtle than the Nazis, but they are marked, watched, harassed. Under Tito's Yugoslavia, association with the Chetniks was dangerous. Families are interrogated repeatedly by secret police. Some are imprisoned on fabricated charges. Property is confiscated. Children of known Chetnik supporters are denied educational opportunities. Many families flee to the mountains or emigrate if they can secure exit visas. The airstrip at Pranjani disappears back into farmland. The fields are plowed and planted. The signal fires are never lit again. The monument to the rescue, if one ever existed, is destroyed. The operation vanishes as if it never happened. In America, the rescued airmen struggle with what they know and what they cannot say. They were saved by people their government now refuses to acknowledge. They owe their lives to a man their former allies have executed as a traitor. The cognitive dissonance is painful, bewildering, enraging. Some try to speak out. Captain George Crayer writes letters to congressmen, to the State Department, to military officials, describing what he witnessed, demanding recognition for Mihailović and the Serbs who sheltered him. The letters are acknowledged politely and filed away. Others contact veterans organizations, trying to organize public testimony. They are quietly discouraged. Military intelligence officers visit some of the airmen and remind them of the classified nature of their mission. They are told that speaking publicly could jeopardize ongoing intelligence operations. The message is clear. Forget what happened. Move on, stay silent. But the Cold War is beginning. Yugoslavia, though communist, is strategically important. Tito has broken with Stalin, making him valuable to the West. Washington does not want to antagonize him with embarrassing historical reminders. The Operation Halyard remains buried in classified files. What the airmen do not know, what almost no one knows for decades, is that in 1948, President Harry Truman quietly authorized the posthumous awarding of the Legion of Merito Draža Mihailović. The award is made in recognition of his role in rescuing American airmen and his resistance against Nazi occupation. The citation, prepared by the War Department, reads in part, General Draža Mihailović distinguished himself in an outstanding manner as Commander-in-Chief of the Yugoslavian Army Forces and later as Minister of War by organizing and leading important resistance forces against the enemy which occupied Yugoslavia from December 1941 to December 1944. Through the undaunted efforts of his troops, many United States airmen were rescued and returned safely to friendly control. General Mihailović and his forces, although lacking adequate supplies and fighting under extreme hardships, contributed materially to the Allied cause and were instrumental in obtaining a final Allied victory. But the award is never publicly announced. It is classified immediately. The medal is presented in secret to Mihailović's daughter, Gordana, who has fled Yugoslavia and is living in the United States. She is sworn to secrecy. The award remains hidden in State Department files, unknown even to most of the men whose lives Mihailović helped save. For nearly 30 years, Operation Halyard exists only in whispers, fading memories, and classified documents locked away in government archives. The official histories of World War II do not mention it. The textbooks do not teach it. The monuments do not honor it. The veterans who try to speak are silenced or ignored. The largest rescue of American lives from behind enemy lines in the entire Second World War is systematically forgotten. But truth, once lived, cannot be erased forever. It waits. It survives in the memories of those who were there, in the stories passed down through families, in documents that will one day be declassified. And in the 1970s, slowly, carefully, the story begins to resurface. In 1977, the OSS files from World War II begin to be declassified. Historians sifting through archives in Washington discover mission reports that seem almost unbelievable. Operation Halyard, August to December 1944. 492 Allied airmen evacuated from Nazi-occupied Yugoslavia. 0 casualties. How had this been kept secret for more than 30 years? Journalists begin investigating. A few surviving OSS officers are tracked down. George Mussolini, now in his 60s, agrees to speak. Nick Lalich, still alive, shares his field reports. Slowly, the pieces of the story come together. But the most powerful testimonies come from the rescued airmen themselves. Richard Feldman. A former B-24 radio operator, had been shot down over Serbia in 1944 and hidden by villagers near Pranjani. For decades, he kept silent, respecting the government's classification. But when the files are released, he begins speaking publicly. He describes the starvation of the Serbian villages, the courage of the Chetnik guards, the kindness of people who had every reason to hate foreigners but chose mercy instead. Feldman becomes an advocate for recognition. He contacts other survivors. Together, they form the National Committee for the Mihailović-Chetnik Rescue Mission, dedicated to honoring the Serbs who saved them. In 1979, Feldman travels back to Yugoslavia, now still under communist rule, and secretly visits Pranjani. He walks the fields where the airstrip once stood. He meets elderly villagers who remember the Americans. One woman, now in her 70s, shows him a faded photograph. A group of young American airmen standing with Serbian peasants in front of a barn. She points to one of the men. "That was my brother," she says. "The Germans hanged him in 1945. Feldman weeps. He promises her the world will know. Back in the United States, the surviving Airmen lobby Congress. In 1981, they testify before a Senate subcommittee, recounting their experiences and demanding official recognition for those who saved them. Senator Bob Dole, himself a decorated World War II veteran, listens to their testimony and pledges support. Progress is slow, but it is happening. In 1984, 40 years after Operation Halyard, a group of American veterans returns to Serbia for a formal ceremony. They are elderly now, some in their 70s, but they make the journey. In Pranjani, a small monument is erected. It bears the names of the OSS officers, the C-47 pilots, and the Serbian villagers. The inscription reads, "To those who risked everything to save strangers." The ceremony is attended by a few hundred people, local Serbs, American veterans, family members of those who were executed after the war. One of the airmen, now 70 years old, delivers a speech in halting Serbian, learned phonetically. He thanks the people of Pranjani. He says, "You taught us that humanity is stronger than war." In 1988, further declassification reveals the existence of the Legion of Merit, awarded to Mihailović in 1948. The revelation is controversial. Some praise Truman's quiet recognition. Others criticize the decision to keep it secret for so long. But for the surviving airmen, it is vindication. Mihailović, whatever his political failings, helped save their lives. The villagers who sheltered them did so at mortal risk, and the story, their story, was real. Slowly, the narrative enters mainstream history. Books are published, documentaries are filmed, historians revise the record. Operation Halyard takes its place among the great untold stories of World War II. George Mussolini, in one of his final interviews before his death in 1987, is asked why the mission was kept secret for so long. He pauses, then says, "Because we abandoned the people who saved us." And no one wanted to admit it. Nick Lalić, who outlives Mussolini by 2 decades, becomes a tireless advocate for the Serbs. He returns to Yugoslavia multiple times, bringing medical supplies and financial aid to the families of those who helped during the war. In 2005, Lalić died at the age of 92. His obituary in the New York Times finally tells the story of Operation Halyard to a new generation. The rescued airmen, now in their 80s and 90s, continue to speak. They visit schools. They write memoirs. They ensure their children and grandchildren know the names. Mihailović, Mussolini, Pranjani. They make certain the world remembers because they never forgot. Today, the fields of Pranjani look much as they did in 1944. Rolling hills, stone farmhouses, forests climbing toward the mountains. But if you know where to look, you can still see the outline of the airstrip, a faint depression in the earth. Barely visible after 80 years, a small monument stands at the edge of the field. Fresh flowers are placed there regularly, left by local families and visiting American veterans. The inscription has weathered, but the words remain clear, in memory of those who chose humanity over fear. Operation Halyard stands as one of the most remarkable rescue missions in military history. 492 Allied airmen were saved, not through firepower or technology, but through human decency and courage. It is a story that transcends politics, nations, and ideologies. The Serbian villagers who hid the airmen were not making a strategic calculation. They were not thinking about alliances or post-war treaties. They saw young men in need, and they acted. The Chetnik soldiers who guarded them knew they were already abandoned by the Allies, already marked for destruction. But they held their positions anyway because honor demanded it. General Mihailović, facing the collapse of his movement and the certainty of his own death, chose to spend his final resources on a rescue mission rather than revenge or escape. George Mussolini and Nick Lalic volunteered to parachute into enemy territory, knowing they might never return because American lives were at stake, and the C-47 pilots flew night after night into darkness, landing by firelight in a valley surrounded by German forces because that is what duty required. These were not superheroes. They were ordinary people confronted with extraordinary circumstances, and they chose courage. In the decades since Operation Halyard was declassified, the rescued airmen and their families have made pilgrimages back to Serbia. They walk the fields. They meet the descendants of those who saved them. They share meals, exchange stories, and forge connections that span generations. One American veteran, returning to Pranjani in 2010 at the age of 88, was met by an elderly Serbian woman who remembered him as a young airman. She had been a child then, helping her parents hide him in their barn. She embraced him and said through a translator, "I prayed every night that you made it home." He wept and replied, "Because of you, I did." These moments, these quiet, personal acknowledgments, are the true legacy of Operation Halyard. The mission succeeded not because of superior tactics or advanced technology. It succeeded because people chose to see each other as human beings, not as enemies or abstractions. In a war defined by industrial slaughter and ideological hatred, Operation Halyard stands as a reminder that compassion is not weakness, that mercy is not naivete, that even in the darkest moments, humanity can prevail. The story was hidden for decades, buried in classified files, erased from official histories. But it survived, carried in the memories of the men who were saved, passed down through families, whispered in villages, until the truth finally emerged. And what is that truth? It is this: courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting in spite of it. The villagers of Pranjani were terrified. The Chetnik guards were outnumbered and abandoned. The OSS officers knew the odds. The pilots understood the danger, but they acted anyway. They lit the fires. They stood watch. They flew into the darkness, and because of that, 492 men went home. 492 sons, brothers, fathers, and husbands returned to their families. They lived full lives. They had children and grandchildren. They built careers, served their communities, and told their stories. All because strangers in a distant land chose mercy. Today, in the United States, there are thousands of people, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren of the rescued airmen, who owe their existence to the courage of Serbian villagers they will never meet. That is the legacy of Operation Halyard. Not medals or monuments, though those have their place. Not headlines or history books, though the story deserves to be told. The legacy is life itself. Families that exist because compassion triumphed. Generations born because people chose humanity over hate. In 2018, a delegation of American veterans and their families returned to Pranjani for the 74th anniversary of the first rescue flight. They brought with them a gift, a bronze plaque bearing the names of the villagers who were executed by the Germans or communists after the war. The plaque was installed at the monument. A ceremony was held. Speeches were given in English and Serbian, and at the end, an elderly Serbian man, the grandson of one of the villagers, stood and spoke. He said, "My grandfather told me before he died that what they did was not heroism. He said they were simply doing what any decent person would do. But I know better. What they did was extraordinary, and I am proud to carry his name." The field fell silent. Then, softly, someone began to sing. It was one of the American veterans, his voice thin with age but steady. He sang a Serbian folk song learned decades ago from the villagers who hid him. Others joined in, Serbs and Americans, old voices blending in a language of shared memory and gratitude. And in that moment, the ghosts of 1944 seemed to stand with them, the young airmen, frightened but hopeful, waiting for the sound of engines in the night. The villagers, exhausted but determined, lighting fires in the darkness. The pilots, descending through the black, trusting in signals they could barely see. And all of them, together, proving that even in a world consumed by war, humanity endures. Operation Halyard was forgotten for decades, but it was never lost, because those who lived it never stopped remembering, and those who inherited their stories never stopped telling them. The airstrip at Pranjani is gone, reclaimed by time and earth. The fires that once guided planes home have long since burned out. The men and women who made it all possible are nearly all gone now, claimed by age and history. But what they did, what they proved, remains. They proved that borders are not barriers to compassion, that language is not required for kindness, that even in the depths of war, strangers can become family. They proved that courage is contagious, that one act of mercy can inspire another, and that history, no matter how hard some try to bury it, will always find a way to rise. This is the story of Operation Halyard, a story of rescue, of risk, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, a story the world forgot, but a story that will now be remembered forever.